So first off, let me just say, ow. Now I'm sure we all know who this guy is. However, if you're unaware, I will tell you that is Stevie Ray Vaughan, arguably one of the best blues players to ever walk the face of the earth, and king master of the nastiest blues stank faces. Now there's a lot of debate over what makes him one of the best blues players. Is it his tone? Is it his style, his licks? A bunch of different things. In my opinion, it's kind of a smattering of all those together, but there is one thing that has always been a topic of discussion, and it is how does the 13 gauge strings that he plays affect his tone and dynamics? As a rather inquisitive person myself, I wanted to give it a shot. So today I'm just going to stick a run-of-the-mill 13 gauge set of strings on my Strat. Now you could also argue I'm putting these 13 gauge strings on my guitar because A, I either hate myself, or B, I like the pain. I'm going to say it's a little of both. But let's go ahead and restring this Strat real quick and we'll find out how they feel and how they sound. Now I know Stevie Ray Vaughan typically played in E flat, but we're going to try it in standard just because, I don't know. So first off, let me just say, ow. So after playing on this 13 gauge set of strings for a little while, I can most definitely say with confidence, my fingers hurt.
My fingers hurt.
Oh, well, now your back's gonna hurt because you just pulled landscaping duty.
13 gauge strings are not for the faint of heart. They are very thick. I don't know how Stevie Ray Vaughan played on these even in E flat. You know, I live on a farm, and if I went to one of the fences over there and grabbed the barbed wire off the fence and strung it up on my guitar, I think it might hurt less. Now, obviously I knew going into playing these they were gonna hurt. It's a 13 gauge set of strings, but I figured I would handle it with a little more ease than I did because I typically use a 10 or 11 gauge set. It depends on how much I'm practicing, but here lately I've been practicing quite a bit, so I've been using an 11 gauge set. I use the Elixir Nano Webs. That's my preferred brand that I use, but you know, I figured I would handle it with a little more grace and a little more ease, but man, those things are tough. Now, in my full-blown honest opinion, playability is difficult. Especially if you're not used to it. You know, I'm not used to playing 13s. You know, I'm sure there's some of us who probably use 13s. You know, the most foreseeable reason for such a thick string gauge is drop tunings. Playing, you know, tuned way down to like, you know, C sharp, C, B, I've even heard of A standard. But, you know, playability for me in standard tuning is no bueno. It's just not there. I couldn't function playing like that. It hurts too much. I can't bend the strings. I have no capability of bending the strings hardly whatsoever in E standard with a 13 gauge set. It hurts so bad. So definitely no dice on that. As far as tone, you know, comparing it to Stevie Ray Vaughan, I'm gonna probably wager that the string gauge, it does impact the tone a little bit just because of the low end, how fat and, you know, those strings are overall. I would wager to say if I put it into a percentage category, it was responsible for probably like 10 to 20% of his tone. The rest of his tone was, you know, in his amps, in his instrument, in his hands. The string gauge set, I don't think had a crazy amount to do with his tone, but it does impact it a little bit just because of that low end. You know, those strings are super thick, so that low end is a little more prominent and you can definitely hear it a little bit better, in my opinion. But, you know, tone and playability, I feel like tone is definitely okay, but the playability for me is just not there. Alright, now we're going to tune down to E flat like Stevie Ray Vaughan.
No question about it, I am ready to get hurt again.
So after playing in E flat for a while, it's definitely a little more tolerable, but it still hurts. It's still painful. The strings are very, very thick. A little bit of the bendability comes back. You know, I can regain a little bit of the grip on the string. The tone, again, they still sound fine. They sound really, you know, really thick. They're very prominent sounding. The low end is very, very thick, very heavy sounding. But you know, it still hurts. So do what you will with this information, but one musician's opinion, I don't recommend using 13 gauge strings for standard tuning or E flat. I just don't think that the need is there, but you know, who knows, maybe you have Hulk hands, you know, incredible finger and hand strength and you need 13s, go for it. But if you're like me, just kind of the run-of-the-mill musician, and you're thinking about going, you know, crazy, putting on a 13 gauge set, don't do it. Don't recommend it whatsoever. You know, unless you want to be on the fast track for arthritis when you get older, go ahead. But otherwise, I'm going to recommend probably don't do this.